Good morning. We are going to look this morning at a writing paper for English Level 2. We're going to look at I'm going to show the example answers on a paper version, which you could print off. Obviously, I'll be typing on screen, but I just wanted to show you when you go to do your test, it will look like this. So you'll log in, you'll be given the numbers and things, so don't worry about that. And so it will look like this on your screen. And that's the information. So it's the same as the test we're doing now. It's just that's what it will look slightly different for you than what it looks like on the screen today, because you will be doing the online version. But I have, from the NCFE website, I sent the links on the group chat last week. I have downloaded the paper version that you can look at to do some practice, and that's what I'm going to be using this morning to show you. Okay, so it's the same paper, but just looks a little bit different. But the main thing is the content. So there's a blank page there. So we'll just scroll down to the questions. Okay, and if you, let's just get this. Okay, so you can see the screen. Okay, so it's going to be a lot of listening while I demonstrate how to answer the questions. But if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself to ask, that's fine. But if you do, then put yourself back on mute so we avoid any background noise. That would be great, thank you. But feel free to ask a question. And I will ask some questions of you at times for suggestions and so on. So you'll need to unmute yourself to ask. So the first activity on this paper is to write a report. So you could be asked to do any of the document types that we have looked at, or that you have looked at when you've been going through the course content. So it could be an email, a letter, a report, an article, and so on. So if you can what you need to make sure is that you are familiar with the features of all of those, so that when you open that test or start the test and find out what document type you need to write, that you know what the features are to include. So we're writing a report, so let's look at the instructions. Your town has been awarded a large sum of money that can be spent either on a new swimming complex or a learning resource centre. So a learning resource centre will be a library with learning space, computers and so on. You represent the Residents' Association and have been asked to write a report to share with the council. Your report should consider the advantages and disadvantages of both options and make a recommendation about how the money should be used. Okay, so Limon has put in the chat, it's your first lesson. Okay, so you will, when you have registered for this course, you should have received a login for the online learning platform. If you've not got that yet, you need to contact the office. And when you go on there, you can watch recordings of the sessions where we've gone through the course content. And you'll also have activities there for you to practice the skills for both reading and writing. So Limon, I hope that answers your question. If you need to ask a question, and you can just unmute yourself or put it in the chat, and I'll every so often have a look to see if there's one in the chat. Okay, so we're writing a report, and it should be between 250 to 350 words. If you, sorry to go back, if you look at the marks, we've got half the marks for both tasks. Remember, there are 2 tasks on this paper, so you need to spend about half the time on both activities. So half the time on activity 1, half the time on activity 2, half an hour for both, and it recommends there. So activity 1, 5 minutes for reading, planning, proofreading, 25 minutes for writing your report, and then 5 minutes again for activity 2, reading, planning and proofreading, and 25 minutes for writing. Okay, so what we need to consider here in this activity is that it's told us to consider the advantages and disadvantages of both options. So we need to include a discussion saying the advantages and disadvantages of the swimming complex, or the and not or, we need to include both, and the advantages and disadvantages of a learning resource centre, and then recommend what we think should be chosen. So don't just discuss the option you think is best, you need to include disadvantages and advantages of both. So you'll have to, when you do your test, which will be an online test taken in the UK Versity office, you'll be given some paper to write on to do your planning and drafting. But we're going to do this on the screen today. So first of all, I would advise you to write down the features of a report that you have learned, so that you ensure you don't forget to include anything. So can anybody tell me what the features of a report are, or any of the features that you can remember or that you've learnt? Okay, I'll start off. So we need a title for a title, and an opening paragraph to say what the report is about. What else do we need? Can anyone remember? Okay, we need headings. The content that we write should be organised in paragraphs. We could include some bullet points. And a conclusion. So I don't have to include bullet points, but they're an option. So we need a concluding paragraph. And we also need to remember that for this report we've been asked to write, we're using factual language. We also want to make sure we have a variety of sentence types. So simple sentences, short simple sentences, and also complex sentences as well. We should all, whatever the document type that we've been asked to write, we should always be using appropriate and ambitious vocabulary. So try and include so not just simple words all of the time. If it was appropriate, you could include some technical vocabulary. And also making sure our tenses are consistent. Okay, so we've just reminded ourselves we're planning our text, and we've reminded ourselves of the features of the report, which is our text type, and a few other things we need to remember. So I've just written them there while I'm planning, just to remind myself. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes just planning what I'll write. So in my introduction, and this part of the test, your planning is not marked, so it doesn't need to be in full sentences. It does not need to be even in full words. It's just for you to jot down your thoughts and have a plan of what you are going to write. Okay, but it won't be marked, so it's for you, this part. So in my introduction, I'm going to write that the report has been compiled on behalf of the Residents Association, because that's what the task has asked me to do. So I'm going to, in my introduction, I'll explain to the readers, the local council, that I'm going to look at the advantages and disadvantages, and I'm just using shorthand because, as I say, it's just for me. Your plan will just be for you. It's not going to be marked. So I'm looking at the advantages and disadvantages of a swimming complex or the Learning Resource Centre. And I think as well in my introduction, I should say that views taken from different groups of residents. So that will be my my introduction, and then I just want a few notes about each. So I'm just imagining this because obviously it's not real life, so I just need to think up a few advantages and disadvantages. So advantages could be health of residents, safety for children learning to swim, community aspects, people meeting there, and disadvantages could be will people use the centre? Possibly there's a larger complex in the next town already. Okay. So, any questions so far about the plan? Remember, this is just, you're just pouring out your ideas, your initial ideas, so that you have some content for when you start writing your report. Obviously, I'm talking while I'm doing it, so it's going to take a bit longer than you would be expected to spend on it. So then let's do the same for the Learning Resource Centre. So as I mentioned, but just to clarify, a Learning Resource Centre would be a library with computers for people to use, with probably a community space, maybe a few small rooms that people could book for meetings or groups. There might be things like a homework club or adult education lessons, things like that. So advantages, that is a community hub. We might have a homework club, possibly English lessons if they're needed by the local community, baby and toddler sessions. So I'm just thinking of the sort of things that might be on in my local library. Obviously we've got the library itself. And then disadvantages. So it doesn't have the health aspect. But then could offer mental health benefits. And then you could add any other disadvantages that you think of. Now, your plan for your report, it's just your ideas, how you're going to organise them. You can obviously add to that when you're writing. So, right, I'm going to write my report here. I'm just going to get rid of some of this space. It's not really worked. Right, so I'm going to write my report now. So first of all, my plan, I need my opening paragraph, my title, of course, as well. So for my title, just need to choose a suitable title. So I'm going to put learning or swimming I'm going to do okay. So there's my title, and I will So I'm just, apologies, just go to underline my, or try to underline my title. Right, I'm going to leave that. I was going to try and underline my title, but it doesn't seem to want to do that, so we'll just leave that. But that's something you could do, or make it bold, just to make it stand out. So then in my introduction, I just want to outline what the report is about. Okay, so I'm going to introduce who it's been written by. So this report has the okay, so I'm using capital letters because we're going to say that that's the type, that's the name of the group, the Residents Association. So that's why I've used capital letters. And explain what they've been asked to do in this report. So remember in the task it said that they've been awarded some money for this project. So I'm just referring to that now. So so we've also been asked to make a recommendation, so I'm just going to include that in my introduction as well, but that's how the report will end. Okay, does anyone have any questions about writing an introductory paragraph or anything else so far? Okay, so for this task, you are drawing on your own experience of perhaps knowing the benefits of a leisure centre or a swimming complex and a library centre, or you might just have to imagine them. But what you've been marked on is using those report features and using correct spelling, punctuation, grammar, the vocabulary you've used, and that you have looked at the advantages and the disadvantages of both, because that's what the task has asked you to do. So that's what we always need to keep in our mind whilst we write. So I'm going to use a subheading, and I'm going to look at the swimming complex first. So, and then I will refer back to my plan. You will have the plan in front of you. You won't have to keep scrolling up and down because you will have it written on paper when you do your test. So it'll be a bit simpler for you to keep referring to it. So my advantages the health benefits for everybody's children's safety, so swimming lessons, and the community aspect. So use those to write my next paragraph. So swimming competence. So I'm just putting some imaginary content in. Because I'm going to use that later for a disadvantage. You'll see when I write the disadvantages why I've included that about having a pool previously. So now I'm going to use my plan, the health benefits. So okay, so I've included their health benefits, swimming lessons, and something I've just thought of, which I wasn't in my plan, but of course I can add here, is that swimming in a swimming complex would be an all-weather activity. So yeah, so pool provide, so it's a healthy activity. And I want to make sure that I'm referring to that all groups would benefit. So young, old, in between, families, single people, so on. And so how could I put in about the weather? So possibly compare it to an outdoor activity that is weather dependent. So the tennis courts I'm going to put, because people don't tend to play tennis in the rain. Okay, so I think I've put enough in that paragraph about advantages. So let's look at the disadvantages of the swimming complex. So as I mentioned previously, I'd put in about there being a previous pool that was demolished. So I'm going to refer to that as a disadvantage. So the fact that they've had a pool that closed down, is that going to happen again? So why did it close down? So why is this a disadvantage? So okay. So so any questions? So let's look then at the advantages of our learning centre. Now you can probably think of lots of advantages and disadvantages for both of these options. I'm just including a few. So what would the advantages be? Let's go back up to our plan, which again you will refer to more easily. So advantages, it's a community hub. There'll be homework clubs, English lessons, baby and toddler sessions. Okay, so I'm going to include those items from my plan in my next paragraph. But it's not just young people, is it? So about adults as well. So I want to include some bullet points here so I can show the assessor that's marking my test that that's another feature I know about and that I am able to use well and appropriately. So it also says, so I'm going to use bullet points, but if we refer back to the tasks, we're going to have to make a recommendation. I'm a representative of the Residents Association, so presumably they would have spoken to residents and done some research, albeit may have been anecdotal. It may have just been speaking to groups of residents. So I want to refer to that. So we have spoken to So I know I've made some errors that are underlined in red, but I'm going to correct those when I proofread. So some of the things from our plan. So a homework club. So having computers available for everyone. So I am using my own experience of visiting a local library, and I know some things that happen there. You might have to imagine that, or you may be able to use your own experience as well to give appropriate suggestions. Okay, any questions? So other benefits. So I'm going to start a new paragraph, but I'm not going to do a new heading because I'm going to continue to talk about the benefits. So I don't need to do to write a new heading yet because I'm still talking about the same topic. So the assessor will be looking at how you've organised your content. Okay, but I do need to remember that I also need to look at disadvantages. So I'll put my next heading in. I can spell disadvantages. So let me refer back to my plan and what I said the disadvantages were. So it doesn't have the health aspect, but I've put that it may have mental health benefits in as an alternative. Oh, I've put a contraction in there, and this is a formal report, so I'm not going to use contractions, I'm going to use the full words. So instead of doesn't, does not. Physical health. But I'm going to do a however here. So what are those mental health benefits that would outweigh the physical? So, this isn't, so in this paragraph, the fact that the only disadvantage that I've highlighted is outweighed by all these benefits really helps me to draw the conclusion for the end of this report. So I'll do my last subheading, my conclusion. And if you remember in the task, it asked us to make a recommendation. So so we've done the advantages, we've considered the advantages and disadvantages of the swimming pool complex and the Learning Resource Centre, and now we need to make our recommendation. And in my plan, oh, I didn't do a conclusion in my plan, so I'm just going to add that. So I'll put in my subheading, conclusion and recommendation. So that's highlighted straight away to the assessor that I am including that recommendation from the task. So we've taken views and we have been weighing up the pros and cons, or advantages and disadvantages. So okay, so my recommendation, so we recommend so here it doesn't really matter which one you choose, but your choice should refer back to what you've already written in your advantages and disadvantages possibly. So it needs to make sense. If you've said there's you know, a multitude of disadvantages to a swimming pool, and you've highlighted hardly any disadvantages to the Learning Resource Centre, but then you conclude that the swimming pool should be built, then that won't make sense. So you need to be mindful of what you've written in your content of the text. So if your advantages lean towards the Learning Resource Centre, which mine do here, as you've seen as I've been writing, then that's what I need to recommend, because otherwise then you've not really followed what the task is. So just to be aware of that your conclusion is fed into from everything else you've written. So make sure that it makes sense. So I've obviously not really had a disadvantage to the Learning Resource Centre other than the physical health of the swimming pool, but as I've outlined there, it's outweighed by all the mental health benefits. So I'm just confirming why I've chosen this. Finally, just a sentence to recommend it. Okay, so obviously because I'm stopping and starting and I'm scrolling up to check my plan, which you won't have to do, I have taken more time to do this than you will. But you need to be keeping an eye on the time all the way through. So I'm just going to quickly proofread it. You are going to spend and be more careful when you do your proofreading, but I'm conscious of your time this morning. So, so I've done my introductory paragraph that does not have a subheading, which is, so I'm just going to do some proofreading to improve my spelling. So it would be a great asset to the town. Okay. So I've got a spelling mistake there. So advantages. So this is where you'll see just little silly mistakes that you've made. And when you're properly reading it through, then you will check that it makes sense as well. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm not going to continue just checking my spelling because you know how to do that. I was just showing you for demonstration. So I've read through it, I've proofread it, it all makes sense. I've included everything that I needed to. So I'm now going to move on to the next section. But does anyone have any questions before we do? Okay, if you do need to go to another session, or if you can't stay any later than 10 AM, that's fine. The session is being recorded and will be available next week. So you can catch up then. So activity 2 has a possible 22 marks. Remember, half the marks, so half the time. You've won a break for 2 people, which includes tickets to a concert or a sporting event. However, the break is very soon and must be taken midweek when you are normally at work. Write an email to your manager, giving them full details and persuading them to allow you to have the time off. And it's given us the email address here. So we need to give full details of the what we've won, so how many days, which days we need to go, so on. And we need to persuade them. So we've got some room to plan. So what do we need to include in an email? So does anyone want to share with us how do we start an email? What do we need to include when we're writing an email? Right, okay. So we need a salutation, a dear or hi. Even before that, we will need an email address. Now this is a workplace email, so we're going to use formal language. Appropriate vocab. It's going to be polite. No colloquialism, so we won't use everyday or slang language. And we need to sign off. So my plan, I'm going to start with Dear Sam, because in the workplace, I think these days it's extremely unusual to need to use Mr. or Mrs. when addressing your manager. It may be different if possibly in a school or certain workplaces, but it would be unusual. So I'm going to use the first name from the email address, Sam Davis. So Sam, I need to include that it's an annual leave request, but at short notice. And that I'm going to explain the exceptional circumstances. I'm going to say it's a football final. So you could put it's a concert or another sporting event. So why would they want to approve it? So what could I be writing in my email? So I could say it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Could refer to the manager also being a fan. football, so they can might refer to their own feelings if they had this opportunity. So I'll also refer to my work record. So I could say that I'd had an excellent appraisal recently. And I'm a valued member of the team. So all persuasive elements. There's a company wellbeing policy. So I could refer to that as well. And I'd want a quick response. When I'm writing, I'm going to think about how to phrase that, but I'll need to let them know quickly whether I can accept the prize. And then I need to remember to do a sign off. Okay, so I've got my plan in place. Let's look at the beginning. So I need my salutation and my short notice, exceptional circumstances. So it's asked us to write the email address in. Now, I can't actually write the email address on this paper version, but you will be able to copy and paste it when you are doing the online test. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. It won't let me do it in that field. I'll just do it here to show you that. Oh, go back to the top for some reason. It won't let me do it even, but you know where to put the email address. And you need to write a suitable subject. So it could be annual leave request. So you know that you need the email address. Why is it doing that? Let's get rid of that. Sure why that's happened. Apologies. No, it won't let me type. Okay, it's not going to let me type there, so I'm just going to go on the next page rather than mess around with that. There we go. So I'm going to have an email address, and still it's doing this. Let's have a look. Right, I don't want to mess around with formatting. I'll just find okay, apologies for this. I'm not sure why this is not letting me type. Let's just do it on here. So you'd have your email address. We don't need a date because it puts it in for us. So our subject. So in the email, you always have to write subject. So I would just put I'm actually going to write, because obviously it's said in our task that this is it's urgent, it's next week. So I'm going to put exceptional annual leave request. So hopefully when my manager sees it, it will draw their attention to the fact that it is urgent. So need to start with my salutation, and I know his name's Sam, and tell him in my first paragraph why I'm sending him this email. Just make this bigger because it's very, very small. So hopefully you can see it. So I'm writing to request so let's just say it's Tuesday and Wednesday. And I'm going to say what the date is. Let's just say it can just make it up, it doesn't really matter. The 28th and 29th of May. So he knows, it's a formal email request. If you were asking for annual leave, you would of course have to include precise details of the dates. And then we want to acknowledge that we know this is exceptional to request it so late in the day. So I know so we're acknowledging that we know this is unusual to request it this close to the date. So you're just letting him know in this introduction that you're going to explain why you're asking for this. So I'm being very polite because it's I am fulfilling the demands of this task, or so the instructions of this task, which are to email your manager. It's a workplace email. It's making a request in exceptional circumstances. So rather than saying, I know when I explain you'll agree, I'm being very polite, I hope. Okay, I'm acknowledging, I'm being polite here. I know that this is the company policy, but I'm going to give an explanation for why I'm not following it in this circumstances. So we're being very polite in our language. So why? So because we have just found out we've won a competition. So I'm going to say I found out today, that's why it's so urgent. So I chose to do a football event, but you could choose whatever you want. It doesn't really matter what the event is. It's just that this is why you need the time. It's just why it needs to be a particular date. That's the only reason they've asked you for that, because obviously you can't change the date of a concert or a football fixture. So I'm going to refer, as I mentioned in my plan, to the manager's own feelings. Okay. Okay, so again, I'm being polite. I'm not saying I know you'll agree. I'm saying I'm sure you will understand. So I'm being very careful with my use of language there. So why should he grant it? So we need to think about our plan that we had a successful appraisal recently. So let's write about that. So it was I'm going to say it's recent as well. So it's fresh in the manager's memory. So I'm explaining why I'm an asset to the company and why they should treat me well in these exceptional circumstances. And I'm going to add some other achievements. So producing some specific vocabulary, bringing a client on board, kind of company speak. So just including a few persuasive elements there of how great an employee I am. So let's refer as well to the company wellbeing policy. I think as well, what I could show off here to the assessor is that I know how to use inverted commas. So I'm going to quote from my imaginary wellbeing policy. So I'm going to say I am a hard-working and loyal employee. And the policy states that, and so I'll give a quote here. I'm just showing the different punctuation that I can use. I've got full stops, commas, I've got an exclamation mark, but I'm going to use some inverted commas as well. Think about when you're writing how you can appropriately show off the writing skills that you have, the punctuation, the appropriate vocabulary, the sentence structure. So this is a good opportunity to show inverted commas by using a quote. So I'm going to quote that loyalty and hard work will always be rewarded. So obviously you're having to use your imagination a lot, but just think how you can use your skills and show that you have those skills to the assessor. I want to as well show that I've checked. I mean, I could finish the email there, but I don't think that's long enough. I'm thinking about the length, the time that I've been given to do it. I think I need to add a few more details, another paragraph or so. So how does it impact on the company, me being away? So I'm going to say that so I've checked the department calendar. And there's no one else on leave at this time. So I'll also put that I've So I'm not making any presumptions. Again, careful choice of language if my leave request is granted. Remember, it's a formal situation, workplace email, so I'm being very polite. And I'm just going to remind him, it's only 2 days. So, right, I think I've probably got enough there now, so I'm going to write conclusion. Again, polite language. And reminding him that it is exceptional circumstances. But the task has said that it's next week, it's really short notice. Normally we might expect a leave request to be granted within a day or so. You know, your managers might be busy and they need to check other things, but I'm going to politely ask for them to reply urgently. So why? So I would be grateful if. So again, formal, polite language. And I'm also going to offer to discuss it with them if needed. Polite sign off, and I'll just put my own name. It's your manager, they know who you are. You don't necessarily need to write your full name, you'd expect them to know who you are. So that is fine just to write your first name on this task. Oops. There we go. Lost my mouse for a minute there, apologies. Okay, so any questions about that? I think what you need to be careful of when you're asked to write an email is who it's to, because often emails are quite informal. Even between colleagues, you might write a really informal email. Hi, how are you? How was that concert at the weekend? Did you have a great time? You might miss words out. You might say, go in for a coffee after work, rather than we are going for a coffee after work. Use that really informal language even with colleagues. But this task, they've told us it's with the manager. We're asking for something that is exceptional. So we need to be polite. We need to use formal, courteous or polite language. So that's a really important element of this task. It needs to be of a suitable length. So we need to think of things that we need to address, why we need the leave, what a great employee we are, why the company should grant it, what their policies are, what you've done to ensure there's no impact on the team, and when you want to reply by. Okay, so let's just proofread it. We are over time now, but I'm going to go through and proofread it just to, this is being recorded if you need to leave, but just to show you, you should be doing careful proofreading. So, dear Sam, just reading through it all the way through will help you check if it makes sense. I'm emailing to request annual leave for next Tuesday and Wednesday, 28th and 29th of May. I know that company policy is to give at least 2 weeks notice. However, I hope when I explain, you will agree that these are exceptional circumstances. I don't think that sentence is very well punctuated, so I'm going to change it. I know that company policy is to give 2 weeks notice. I'm going to change that into full stop. However, I hope when I explain, I'm going to put a comma because it didn't really make sense. It was when I explain you, which doesn't make sense. So I need that comma for the pause, so it you know, we can interpret that correctly. However, I hope when I explain, you will agree that these are exceptional circumstances. I found out today that I've been lucky enough to win a 2-night stay in London with tickets for the Champions League final at Wembley. As a football fan yourself, I'm sure you will understand that this is the opportunity of a lifetime. I recently had a successful annual appraisal, during which you praised my loyalty and commitment to the company. My other recent achievements include bringing a new client on board and developing a new training module for the department. The company has recently launched its new wellbeing policy, and I hope you will agree that attending the Champions League final in London, so spelling mistake there, would be of great benefit to my well-being. Now, I think this sentence is too long without any commas, so I'm going to put one in. The company has recently launched its new well-being policy, and I hope you will agree. So I'm going to change that sentence. And it is good, although we want complex sentences, it is good to have some shorter sentences for balance. So that sounds better. I hope you will agree that attending the Champions League final in London would be of great benefit to my well-being. Also, 1, maybe 2 exclamation marks. Don't overuse them because it starts to look informal. You know, a feature of texting and informal emails often have lots of exclamation marks, not in a formal email, but showing that you can use them. So 1, possibly 2 is a good strategy to have. I'm hardworking and a loyal employee, and the policy states that loyalty and hard work will always be rewarded. So again, showing what I know, fitting in what I can do, the skills that I have with my spelling, punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, showing that off to the assessor by fitting it into the task I'm given appropriately. Always make sure it's appropriate. I've checked the department calendar. There are no other team members on leave next week. I've also discussed with colleagues about covering my essential responsibilities. So I'll have a comma because that's a really long sentence. So if my leave request is granted, oh, I've already got one, so I don't need one there. There will not be an impact on, so that doesn't make sense. So this is why proofreading is important. There will not be an impact on the productivity of the team for those 2 days. In conclusion, I hope you will agree that winning this prize is a wonderful opportunity and will be able to grant me leave. Yeah, and that does make sense. And we'll be able to grant me leave for next week. Okay, I need to address this sentence. In conclusion, I hope you will agree that winning this prize is a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to put full stop there. And we'll use a therefore. I'm not happy with this sentence, which is why I'm just spending a bit of time on it. So I'm just going to, I think what I need to do is delete that part, and now it makes sense. Okay. In conclusion, I hope you will agree that winning this prize is a wonderful opportunity and will be able to grant me leave for next week. As I need to confirm the tickets, I would be grateful if you could let me know your decision by the end of the day if possible. If you want, so another spelling mistake, to discuss this with me, I would be happy to do so. And then we need a more formal sign-off. Regards, Catherine. Okay, so hope you've seen now why proofreading is important. Any questions about that? Any questions about the test itself? Okay, so so we should be looking at reading next Saturday and another writing paper next Sunday. So have a good day and a good week, everyone, and thank you for coming to this session.